Welcome back to Killer Stories. I'm your host, Bobby Holmes. Sorry if this episode is a little delayed. Better late than never. I spent 4 days in Napa Valley, so instead of writing, I was sipping wine and eating way too much charcuterie. Then I spent Monday in a comatose state, which also happened to be the first day of kindergarten for my son. And honestly, I'm still not back into my normal groove yet. Today, I am discussing the case of Brianna Arrington. A little different from my typical stories, this time the victim survived and is able to describe all the details of what happened to her. The attack on Brianna was by a gang in Norfolk, Virginia. Apparently, there's a Mexican gang here in Ogden, Utah, the Tracy gang. When my family first moved here, we actually planned to live in Ogden because that's where my husband works. We offered on a house and everything. When the offer was accepted, I remember a realtor saying we should have a meth test done. Meth is common enough in the area that you need to test the home to be sure that meth was never cooked or frequently smoked inside. Slightly alarming, but we were able to look past that. Then one day at work, someone mentioned to my husband that the house was near where a Tracy gang member lived, and he would tell him to look out for us. We put the brakes on real fast. I don't want a gang member to know who we are, where we live, or to look out for us. The area where we ended up buying did not require a meth test, so we felt pretty good about that. And no gangs in Kaysville, Utah that I know of. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Bloods and the Crips. They're rival gangs that originated in southern Los Angeles, California. Just a little gang history. The Crips started back in 1967, made famous or infamous by Stanley Williams. Initially, the purpose was to bring government awareness to the public. CRIP stands for Common Revolution in Progress. But before too long, their attempts to bring awareness to the community turned to acts of violence. The Crips began claiming their territory in California, and innocent bystanders were becoming victims of attacks. People of Compton in southern Los Angeles were afraid to leave their homes. Another gang was formed to fight back against the Crips, the Bloods. The Bloods were started by high schooler Raymond Washington. Ultimately, the neighborhood battles escalated due to the use and distribution of drugs. Stabbings, shootings, and murders became common issues for the local police. If you were a Crip, you wore blue. Bloods were red. Most gangs have some type of initiation to prove you're serious and can be trusted. In my research, I found an article with some of the most insane gang initiations. To become a member of the Knights Templar in Mexico, the original initiation was to kill and dismember a person of a rival gang. But that wasn't enough. Now, in order to join, you'll have to eat their heart. Yes, cannibalism. The members sit around and watch you consume the entire heart of the person you killed. To become a Hell's Angel, it's less violent and more gross. They pour a bucket full of urine and feces over your head. I'm not sure why anyone on earth would be willing to do that. That sounds like it would give you the worst case of pink eye. The Latin Kings originated in New York way back in the 1920s. The initiation is to be jumped in, allowing the current members to beat you up, and they expect you to fight back and show what you've got. There are more recent reports that initiation has changed. Now you bring in your current girlfriend or wife to be gang raped by the other members. I can't imagine their relationships would continue after that. The Junkie Funky Kids. They don't sound too scary. The Junkie Funky Kids reside in South Africa and go by the acronym JFKs. The initiation process involves an obstacle course, but it's much less fun than American Ninja Warrior. As you go through the course, other gang members are standing by with belts, chains, and wooden planks to beat you along the way. And finally, the Bloods. Since their creation in California, multiple blood gangs have popped up across the country. The initiation can differ in each location, but in New York City, if you want to join, you have to get out what they call a $150. You must cut someone's cheek with a box cutter so badly that they need 150 stitches. Other areas require you to kill a Crip member. Or if you're a woman, you would be sexed in, meaning you must have sex with every gang member. One thing I do know is that when you join a gang, they do not like it when you try to leave. And that is what happened in today's case. Some gangs even have the saying, blood in, blood out, meaning if you do leave, you can expect to die. Very few gangs allow you to leave without repercussions. 20-year-old Brianna Arrington was a single mother to a toddler boy. Despite her working 2 jobs, they were homeless. In late 2019, Brianna's boyfriend introduced her to a friend, 18-year-old Skylar Webb. They started hanging out with a group of 10 or so people and gave Brianna and her son a place to crash. She said they all seemed to be in a difficult place in their life, but were staying afloat by helping each other. Brianna didn't know, well, not at first anyways, but these people helping her, they were a gang, the Eastside Rollin' 20s Outlaw Bloods. They were a brand new gang, but had connections back to the original Bloods in California. After 6 months of couch surfing with the gang, they asked Brianna to join. She liked these people and so badly wanted to be part of a family. A family is one thing, but a gang, she had no idea what she was in for. She struggled to learn the handshakes and keep up with all the history of the Bloods. When it came time for her initiation, she was jumped in. 10 of her fellow gang members, the friends that have been helping her for the past 6 months, beat her for 20 minutes straight while she tried to fight for her life. Every time she got something wrong, according to the gang, she was beaten. Within days of becoming a Rollin' Eastside 20s Outlaw Blood, which is way too long for a gang name, she endured over 6 physical assaults. Brianna, being the newest member, had to do all the bitch work. They sent her to get pizza and bring it back to the headquarters for movie night. It was April 23rd, 2020. Guess what hardcore movie the gang watched? The remake of Disney's The Lion King. While watching the movie, she was quizzed on blood history and, well, she was failing her quiz. She received a punch with every wrong answer. The leader of this gang, 31-year-old Brandon Say-So Winnigan. Say so, like, why? Because I say so? I don't know that for sure. That's just the only sense I can make of this nickname. She told Say So she wasn't cut out for this. It's not who she is. You would think since they took her and her son in and looked out for each other for 6 months that they would have some sympathy and allow her to part ways. There is something called walking papers, which is written permission to leave the gang. And this is a new gang, like brand new. The 20 in their name is for 2020, and this gang at most was only 4 months old. Brianna has only been a member for a few days. Instead, Say-So cleared his throat and announced to the gang that Brianna wanted out. After a dramatic pause, he turned and punched her in the face. He said she knew too much and might talk. Because of that, they had to kill her. Come on, guys. Obviously, she didn't know anything. She was failing Blood History 101. All of which you can probably find on Google anyways. While her 2-year-old son was in the room, another gang member took off one of her socks and shoved it into her mouth, while they continued to beat her. Her son cried and screamed for them to stop hurting his mommy. Say-So pistol whipped Brianna. The members pinned her down to the ground, wrapping their hands around her throat to choke her. Then, Say-So poured bleach into her mouth. Brianna says she felt like she was drowning. The thought of drowning in water is horrific enough, one of the worst ways to go, but drowning in bleach? It sounds terrifying and painful. If the plan was to kill Brianna, the next part's confusing to me. The group carried her outside to her car. She got inside with her son on her lap and locked the doors. She locked everyone else out, but she didn't have the keys to drive away. While inside the car, she began honking the horn to try to bring attention to the situation, but no one came to her rescue. The gang surrounded the car, each holding a weapon. Realizing her fate, she moved her son into the back seat to try and keep him safe. Her back window was broken and was covered with saran wrap. One of the members crawled in through it to the front. They shoved her from the driver's seat and drove to a more remote location. I'm wondering if they had the keys, why did they need to crawl in through the back window? Once they had the car out of sight, the gang repeatedly stabbed Brianna in the back and in the head. A shot was fired in her right eye, which exited through her right ear. The gang assumed the shot to her face was fatal. They took her son and left. What they didn't realize is the bullet somehow missed her brain. Brianna said everything went black and she doesn't remember much after honking the horn back at the gang headquarters. The plan was to kill her son as well, but they decided against it. The death of a toddler would bring way too much attention from police. They abducted him and drove 5 miles away, dumping him out on a busy street in the middle of the night. It was pouring rain, and this poor little 2-year-old boy was just wandering around for hours. So sad that it took that long for someone to notice him. A garbage man found him and thankfully called the police. My heart hurts thinking about what he witnessed, and I know even at 2 years old, that may cause some post-traumatic stress. I mean, look at Dexter Morgan. I know, he's a fictional character, but he and his brother witnessed his mother's murder at a very young age, and both turned out to be serial killers. Sorry if I just ruined season 1 for you, but if you're listening to this podcast about true crime, I'm sure you've seen Dexter. And if not, add it to your queue and do yourself a favor, just stop after season 7. Don't even bother with season 8. Just imagine your own ending. It'll be better. Anyways, what's strange is how they were basically homeless, but Brianna's son was wearing what the police described as his Sunday's best. He was questioned, but at age 2, all the officer got out of him was Momo. 7 hours after Brianna's son was found wandering the streets, another 911 call was placed. A woman discovered a silver Mercedes parked on Glendale Avenue. The side of the car was riddled with bullet holes, and a woman was slumped over inside, covered with blood. When a police officer arrived, he called out to her. He assumed she was dead because of the amount of blood loss, and her face was severely swollen. But miraculously, Brianna survived. When he called out to her, she moaned, and he immediately called for an ambulance. She was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. As I stated earlier, the bullet entered through her eye socket and out of her ear. Brianna was in a coma for weeks before waking up. Once she recovered enough to talk to the investigators, she described what happened and who was responsible. Given Brianna's injuries and the fact that she was back to being homeless, her son was put into foster care. The group was arrested on June 11th, just 19 days after the attempted murder. Bear with me here because I know I'm going to stumble on at least one name here. They aren't the easiest to pronounce. The gang leader, 32-year-old Brandon Saso Winnigan, 23-year-old DeAndre Watkins, 21-year-old Javon Hodges, 22-year-old Topsarshia Hodges, 19-year-old Asia, I think it's Asia, there's a J in there, 19-year-old Asia Smith-Moore, 23-year-old Sadia Brown, 19-year-old Ginger McAfee, 18-year-old Skylar Thump Webb, 18-year-old Tavarius Mitchell, and 22-year-old Xavier Walker. The charges for all 10 of them were as follows: malicious wounding, use of a firearm and commission of a felony, abduction, mob assault, conspiracy to commit felony, grand larceny, gang hazing, gang participating, and gang recruitment. What's funny is I don't see attempted murder on the list. Perhaps the only one with that charge will be who actually pulled the trigger. But I would say shooting someone in the face is definitely intent to kill, and all 10 participated. In December of 2020, Brianna testified in court against her former gang members. She explained how she was now deaf in her right ear. Then she removed her prosthetic eye to show the extent of the physical damage they caused. She's taking 28 different medications every day to stay healthy and out of pain, and she has many more surgeries planned. Brianna described how she lives with PTSD and often wakes up screaming and fighting off people in her sleep. This case is still ongoing, and it's unknown if Brianna's son is back in her care or still in a foster home. Gang activity in Norfolk, Virginia has become a serious issue. There is thought to be 67 different gangs, 25 of which are actively committing crimes. A task force was put together to help stop gang activity. The following departments worked together on the issue: the Norfolk Police, U.S. Marshals Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force, Virginia State Police, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Newport News Police Department, Virginia Beach Police Department, Chesapeake Police Department, and Chesapeake Sheriff's Office. Now that's quite the lineup. As of now, the gang members have only been charged, not sentenced for their crimes. I hope that justice is served for Brianna and her son. Thanks so much for listening to Killer Stories. I appreciate all the reviews, emails, and comments from my listeners. Keep them coming. You can email me at killerstoriespodcast@gmail.com and leave a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Killer Stories Podcast, and I'm on Twitter at Killer Stories PC. The best compliment you can give me is sharing the podcast with your true crime-loving friends. Until next time, this has been a killer story.